Gentlemen, welcome to the Front Row Dads podcast. Today, I'm joined by Eric Wohlwend and his boys to start off the show. We'll introduce them in just a moment, but Eric is a man who's been married for 22 years. His sons, Ethan and Deven, are 13 and 15. Eric is a veteran and has been a full-time real estate investor since 2003. He's the author of the book, The Family Success Triangle. And by the way, there's lots of things that Eric has done here. We're just scratching the surface, of course, of his bio. The part that really stands out for me, and I'm really excited to talk about today, is that his kids have written books and have started investing at a very young age. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But when I was introduced to Eric and his family from my good friend and a fellow front row dad, Matt Drinkon, I remember sending me a message, and he's like, Eric and his family, they are our people. Like, they travel, and then I start looking at some of their social media. And next thing you know, they're in an airplane, and I'm talking like in the pilot seat and in the co-pilot seat, talking about their books, talking about the adventures they've had, being interviewed around real estate investing. And Eric and his family homeschool these two amazing young men. And so I want to talk about all of how they've created success as a family. So Eric, Ethan, Deven, welcome to the Front Row Dads podcast.
Thank you so much for having us, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So let's start with the boys. You guys have books in your hands. These are books that you've written. So if each of you could just take a moment and tell us about the book, why you wrote it, what it's about. Let's start there. So Ethan, do you want to begin?
Sure. My book, The Tree House, it's a fictional story about a kid named Darius Knight who uses a pile of scrap wood from a construction site to build a tree house, and he ends up starting a construction company. And later in the book, someone from the city code inspector finds out about him, and the inspector says, you can't do this. You can't be helping people and building this stuff without these permits. And he ends up getting in a fight with the city code, which is based off of a city around where we live.
And is this a true story, based on a true story?
No.
Okay. And so how did you come up?
Very loosely based on.
Loosely. How did you decide that was going to be the theme of the book?
Well, I wanted to write a fictional story like Deven's second book, The Garage. And I wanted it my brain started with, all right, there's got to be a place where him and his friends can meet up, to get away from the annoying other brother. Mm-hmm. And what better place than a tree house, which is based off of a tree house that my dad had built me and my brother before I was born, probably.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. I love it.
We wanted to get some of the investing parts in there.
Yeah.
And woodworking parts, since they're building a tree house. So it started with them building a tree house, and then their mentor, which is a neighbor, teaches them about woodworking and about investing. And then later in the book, they end up starting a construction business.
Was it hard to write it?
No, it was easier than I thought.
That's cool.
In the first place, I didn't actually want to write a book. I just thought it was a 100-page business card, and I had already had a business card. I had seen Deven write his first book, and that took him a year. Why would I want to waste a year of my life writing something I already had?
Fair enough.
But it wasn't until late 2021 when he handed a book to a speaker at the National Real Estate Convention, which we go to every year. Mm-hmm. And he was so impressed that he had written the book. He invited Deven to a conference on the other side of the country, and I had to stay at home. Then I realized maybe it's more than just a 100-page business card.
Yeah.
And then January 2022, when we went to the Rebel Capitalist live event hosted by George Gammon, we met Mark Victor Hansen, and he was impressed with what we had done. And he was like, "You've got to write a book with me." And Mark is such a nice and uplifting person that if you talk to him for even like 5 minutes, you're like, I got to go out and do something good for this world. So saying no to writing a book that he would publish would probably be harder than writing the book itself.
And so here you are.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing. And Deven, how about for you?
I actually have 2 books. My first book is called If I Can Do It, So Can You. And I wrote that when I was 11. It's about how I started investing when I was only 7 years old. Very easy to understand, kind of a how-to guide on real estate. But once again, written by an 11-year-old. So if I can do it, so can you, just like the title.
That's cool.
And then Ethan was talking about, we met Mark Victor Hansen in January of 2022. And he said, "You guys should write a book with me." And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." And we eventually decided on writing a fictional story for kids and teenagers so that I could help teach them more. My first book was great, but not a lot of kids are going to want to read a how-to book on real estate. A fun fictional book, however, that still teaches some good lessons, now that they would be interested in.
And so I think his best remark from anybody, and we love all reviews on Amazon, but when we went to a business meeting and this 12-year-old girl was drugged with her mother there and didn't want to be there, he gave her one. She read the first couple of chapters during breakfast and said, "This is the best book I've ever read."
That's cool. How did that feel, Deven?
That was, yes, I wrote something and people really like it.
Yeah. Question for both of you boys, whichever one, both of you want to answer this. What do you think makes your family different, unique, cool? What's the brand for your family?
We work together and integrate all parts of our life. A lot of people I hear about, at least, they don't want to talk about money at the dinner table or whatever. We are open. We talk to each other about everything. We don't hide things from each other. And we all work together on stuff. I help out with the business. I have my own business. And we all help to work together and teach each other, and we all end up better for it.
That's cool. How do you boys, what's the way that you enjoy making money the most? What part of the investing, the real estate, the books, or whatever it is that's generating income, what do you love the most?
The passive income from real estate. That way I can be doing whatever I want, whether that's buying more real estate, going to seminars and learning, or teaching, or selling books. But I like the freedom of passive income.
Yeah, I think a lot of us would agree with that.
Yeah. And this kid loves to be on stage.
Yeah.
He just, I mean, Deven was terrified when he got up, did his first speaking engagement, 100 people plus in Pittsburgh when he's 11 years old. Ethan steps on the stage. Well, you heard him. He just takes over.
Yeah.
It's like, here, let me tell you this whole story. And,
right.
But yeah, he enjoys that a lot.
Hand me the mic. You know, both of those are incredible, qualities. One is I'm terrified to do it, and yet I'm still going to do it. Right. That requires a tremendous amount of courage. And the other one is I have a skill, or I enjoy this, and I'm going to step into that space and see what I'm capable of there. Right. That's wonderful for both of you. And to be different, and yet still go out there together and try to contribute to the world in the ways that you have. Where's your next big adventure? Are you guys traveling anywhere in the near future?
About 2 weeks, we will be speaking in Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, and Wilmington, if I'm not mistaken. 3 cities in North Carolina. 2 months after that, in March, we're out in Santa Barbara. We're working on setting up Minnesota probably directly after that. And then there's a couple of places in Ohio, which is where we're from, in between.
And Eric, you have you're a pilot.
I am.
And you have a couple planes that you take around. Boys, do you fly? Or do you have a desire to fly? Do you have your license? I'm not even sure how old you have to be to pilot a plane.
16 to solo and fly on your own, and to have passengers with you, you have to be 17 and have your license.
You got that
He
dialed
is
in.
a very capable pilot. We were in IMC, so we're flying through the clouds, can't see anything. I was messing with the radios, and we're in the little plane that doesn't have an autopilot, which is still a twin engine.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, here, you just take over. He kept that thing straighter and got us to the next airport even better than I was doing.
Wow, that's
so
cool.
I'm so spoiled with the big one. Get it going, press the button, and it just kind of does whatever.
Yeah, it
But
takes over.
yeah, I have no problem leaving them in charge while I grab a sub from the back or run back to the bathroom in the bigger one.
That is awesome. How do you guys feel about flying?
I'm not super excited about flying, but I do think it's useful, so I'll probably end up getting my pilot's license.
Yeah.
I think it's very useful to save a lot of time driving. And it can be fun. I like using the smaller plane, because the big one, like you said, you just get up there and then you press autopilot, and then you sit there for 4 hours until you get to the location. Right. You actually get to do something in the smaller plane.
Yeah.
But there's benefits to both the big and
the
small.
The Navajo goes over the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
And you can breathe when we do it.
Yes, it's pressurized and turbocharged.
Wow. Guys, that's so exciting. Open-ended question for both of you boys. Is there anything that you would want dads out there to know about how to be great dads? Things you appreciate maybe about your dad, right? It's like, hey, dads, if you're listening to this, this is what us kids want to hear. This is what we want to know. This is how we want you to treat us. Do you have any thoughts?
That's a tougher one. One thing is being absolutely honest. Like I was saying earlier, not hiding things, just saying it, saying things how they are, not how you think they are, wish things were or want them to be.
Don't shelter them. They need to know, sure, you're not going to tell your kids everything, but we go overboard on letting them understand the why behind things. Mm-hmm. And we don't shelter them. Mm-hmm. Never really have.
Yeah. Ethan, any thoughts for you? The things you want to say to the dads out there? How do you want them to treat all the kids in the world?
I was just going to say it a different way than Deven, but he explained it pretty well.
Cool. That's great. That's a great one, guys. I understand that too, not only from having been a kid, right? And, you know, it was interesting. There were moments when adults were really transparent with me and honest with me and treated me like I was a capable person. And I always appreciated that. And there were other times when I could tell people were really hiding things, thinking I was incapable, but yet I was actually intelligent enough to know what was going on. And that didn't feel good, you know? So I appreciate what you both are saying. Yeah.
That's the thing. Most children do understand.
Yes.
And one of my big things is congruency. Two of the chapters of my books are integration, like Deven mentioned before, and congruency. But if you are not completely honest with them, they might not figure out what you're lying about or just not telling the whole truth, but they know there's something that's missing. And it makes them distrust you a little bit. And that's one of the reasons I think you get teenagers acting out.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they're trying to find out what are all these things that I wasn't told. I wasn't big enough. I wasn't good enough, whatever. I wasn't this enough.
Yeah.
Growing up my whole life, and now I'm big enough. I'm strong enough. I have a driver's license, and I want to get out there and do things. And I saw too many kids like that grow up that just absolutely rebelled because they were too sheltered as children. And they went wild at 16, 18, 20.
Yeah.
So I didn't want my kids to do that.
Eric, can you tell us the story about your boys investing at a very young age? Can you just give us?
Are we done with the kids?
Yeah, we can be, yeah, unless you want them to hear this last part and then we can be done. But I would love to hear just the story of how they started investing.
So Deven was the first one, and his whole life I've been taking him. I think we're done with you. Okay. You guys know the story over and over. You lived it.
It's good to hang out. Thanks for being with us.
Yep.
Thanks for coming in to join us, kids. Thank you. Deven, I have a Wednesday night thing every night. We're going there in a couple hours. And it started as a Wednesday morning breakfast with just my wife and I. And we did this so we could get more important, smarter people to come and teach us stuff. And we went there for weeks and nobody showed up. And finally, we had a couple of the big guys from the real estate groups show up and talk to us a little bit. Next thing I know, all these new people are coming and they're asking me questions. And this is 20 years ago when we first got started in real estate. Mm-hmm. So a few years later, Deven's born, and I just keep going every Wednesday and carrying him in a car carrier. And after a month or so, somebody said, "You're bringing your baby to a real estate meeting?" I said, "Yeah, I'm the one that runs the meeting. If you don't like it, you don't need to be here." And then Ethan's born. He starts going. Deven wants to play a game. I mean, what's every 2 or 3 year old want to do? "Hey, Dad, play with me." So I gave him a game to play. I went out, I got more coffee. I'm way behind. It's the beginning of the month. I've got to do all this business, but I also want to spend time with my kid. So I handed him a form. I said, "Here, take this paper from the bank. And I want you to look in QuickBooks and match. And every time you can match up the number, just like your memory game, you put a check mark beside it. And if you get to the bottom and the bottom right corner number is 0, you win." And that's the first day he played memory and reconciled my bank accounts.
And how old was he at this point?
Maybe 3. I just remember going, I was like, "I need another drink. Here, you sit down and just match these up. Quicker I get this done, the quicker we can play."
That's cool.
So he's doing that. And he comes in to be very serious. And he's 5 years old. He said, "Dad, I think it's time for me to invest." And I mean, what am I going to do? His whole life, I've been telling him, "You can do anything. You're big enough. You're strong enough. You're good enough. There's nothing that can hold you back." And I hate that when people say you can do anything. You can become president. And then in the next breath, they're like, "Oh, well, no, you can't buy a Corvette unless you're rich," which is something a family member told me. Like, "Oh, you'll never be that rich." And so you get these incongruent messages. They just don't add up. And I don't want to be like that. I want to be completely congruent. So I said, "Great. You absolutely should start investing." He says, "Well, what should I invest in?" And another lesson I teach is never tell somebody what stock to buy. Don't tell them to do real estate. Tell them they need to be interested. Figure out what you're interested in and find a way to make money from it. So that's exactly what I told my 5-year-old. Says, "Dad, I really don't know anything except for Legos." And boy, does he still loves Legos. He got a bunch of Legos from grandma, the 15-year-old now. 10 years later is still putting together all these huge Lego sets. And he said, "Okay, well, how do I make money in Legos?" Said, "Well, that is something you need to figure out." And he walks out of my home office and goes out. And I didn't know until we just published our book last year exactly how he came up with this. But apparently he sat down and started looking through a Lego magazine to get some ideas. And he put it together that they retire sets after a while. And when they quit making them, they basically double in price over the next couple of months. And he said, "Well, I think it's time for the Lego Death Star," which is my favorite set, his biggest set that he ever put together. He goes, "I think it's time for them to retire that. So I better buy one. And then it'll double in value." And they tell me buy low and sell high. That's investing. That's what I'll do. Well, I didn't know this, but it took him about 2 days. And he put that together, looking at Lego magazines, trying to figure out, and comes in and tells me. I said, "That's brilliant." And the whole time I'm thinking, how am I going to not crush this kid? I have no idea how to make money in Legos. I'm thinking about renting them. There's already an organization that rents them out, and it's kind of like Netflix for Legos, Plego. And he subscribed and paid for that on his own for a couple of years. So he always had new Lego sets to put together. But yeah, he figures out how Lego retires them and it can double his money. And so he goes out and does that at 5. And by the way, messes everything up. He didn't hire a professional. He wanted to save money. He got his brother for a partner, and somebody did. He talks about all this and all of his speaking engagements and podcasts and stuff. But he messed everything up. And the whole thing was, it's a lot better to mess up on a $500 investment than a $50,000 house. Mm-hmm. And by the time he was 7, he bought that first $50,000 house and found a guy that is a buddy of mine and makes loans, and got him to loan the money. So I have never given him a penny to invest. I won't loan him money. I figure it's just not worth it. And if he wants any of my real estate, by the time they prove that they absolutely don't need my money or my real estate, then I will make it available to them, and not before. But fast forward, wow, Deven's been buying real estate for 8 years now, since he was 7. Writes about a bunch of his first deals in his book that he wrote at 10, published at 11. If I can do it, so can you. His brother decided, well, everybody else in the family does it, and I like this idea of not having a job thing. I like the passive income, so I'm going to do that. And he bought his first house at 7. And now,
all right, so go ahead.
Yeah, Ethan owns 30-some properties. Deven owns 40-some. They both have a goal of buying 8 or 10 more this year. And Deven's published 2 books. His third one, I think he's 4 or 5 chapters into it, but it'll be out later this year. Ethan did his first one. I would not bet on him publishing a second one this year. But Deven loves to write. It just far more than anybody else in the family. He thinks it's really cool. He can write and people read it. So Ethan likes on stage and Deven likes writing books.
Okay, so let's get detailed here if we can for a moment. What does it look like for a 7-year-old to buy their own property? So I'm out there listening. I'm a dad. I've got a 6-year-old, right, about to turn 7, and I'm going, I would have no idea where to even start. If I wanted to introduce this concept to my family, I wouldn't know how to even support that. Now, because you're in the real estate business, I imagine that's easier for you to support that. But could a dad out there who's not in real estate support their child in buying their own property? I mean, maybe the answer is go buy the book and read it, and you'll get the whole story and all the answers.
Well, all right. So yes, you could look at my book, Family Success Triangle. I had a very good friend who has been in real estate groups with me for more than a decade. And he said, we knew your kids bought real estate, but he just took a trip and they read the book the whole way there. I think his wife read to him while he was driving or whatever their custom is. He goes, this is incredible. I never really understood. I mean, I knew he did it, but I didn't understand how.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, between Deven's first book and our book, that describes a lot of it. But let me put it in simple terms. I am in real estate. He grew up with it. He, ate it and drank it and slept it. It was all he knew. It was just totally normal to him. Let me ask you, could you teach a 3-year-old how to play pool?
Sure.
Okay. So you have a pool table in the back. I assume you're a decent enough player.
Correct.
But they can't do that because they're not tall enough to reach the table. So what do? You get them a step stool.
That's right.
Right? Or you hold them at first. You hold their hand and show them how to do it. Just like real estate. You walk them through. You put your holding onto their hand, showing them, this is how I hold the front of the cue stick. This is how I hit it. Don't hit the table. Da, 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 da. You tell me, here's the things that can go wrong. Here's how you avoid them. This is what a perfect shot looks like. Is there any difference between playing pool and teaching them to ride a bike? Don't you hold onto the handlebars and the seat and get them going? Don't you let them scratch up your table a little bit and then teach them how to clean it with a brush.
Yep.
Don't you let them wreck their bike and get some skin knees every now and then. The same thing with investing. You show them everything you can. You let them fall down and you make sure they don't get too hurt, but they have to see a little bit of the problems. They have to see a little bit of the pain.
Totally.
And then you're there to pick them back up when they fall down, and you put them back on, tell them it'll be okay, and get them to go again. So yeah, I would say that every father can do this, whether they're in real estate or not. Would it be a lot easier if you ran your own business? Of course. But business is just business. I mean, you're either in a service business or you're in a product business. And you might think that buying houses is a product. It's not. It's all about the service. Mm-hmm. So teach them how to run a good service business like everything else out there.
Now, I know that a lot of this is in the book, and I think people should get the book and read it. But the question that I have is, can you give us a high level of like, what are these big milestones or pillars? Because basic things come up like, does he literally own the house? Is it in his name, or is it kind of like it's in your name?
But my name, you won't find that I don't own a single house either. I happen to control through the various LLCs that I own.
Sure.
About 400 units.
Yeah.
But I would never put my personal name on a house.
Yeah.
So what do I recommend to my child? Start an LLC. When's the last time? Let's go over what everybody's going to ask, which they always do. But he can't sign a contract. Of course he can. I had to teach him cursive first. Mm-hmm. And he signed his first contract to work for one of my businesses. And he has signed every purchase agreement for every property he's ever bought. When he was 7, the first couple, did they want dad or mom to sign? Yes. But right now they're demanding, oh, well, you have to do that. No, there are some of, Deven owns multiple different companies, 2 of which we consider really just his. I own 10% of one of them, and my wife Lila owns 10% of the other one. That way, if there is ever a circumstance where we need somebody that's over 18 to sign, we have somebody. Mm-hmm. But it's a good idea to have 2 members to an LLC. If you have someone that you know, like, and trust that brings something to the table, it's always better to have a dual member LLC than a disregarded entity. But don't believe me, I'm not a lawyer and accountant, so this is just my opinion.
Do your own homework. Yeah.
Right. Do your own homework. But it is very nice to have somebody that's over 18. Do I have to sign? Almost never. There have been many of these deals where he went in and he signed the purchase agreement. He signed all of the closing documentation. He signed for the loan. He either did or didn't do a personal guarantee. He signed as a member of the company for the loan. He signed the mortgage and had the title company record it or the lawyer record it. He writes his own promissory notes and mortgages now, which you just fill in a template. It's not that hard once you've done 10 or 20 of them. And he's been doing these for me for years. So now he takes care of his own. They call the lenders, the 13-year-old Ethan, he just called up. He went to the auction, bought an auction. It was so funny. It's the auditor's auction about 2 weeks ago. So we walk into the government building, and there I stand with my 13-year-old son. I had bought a house and he had bought a house. And I walk up to the guy checking us out, and the auditor standing right behind him. And he knows us because we're always in arguing about tax value of our property, whatever. We buy a lot in his county. So the clerk says, oh, so you bought 2 houses? And the auditor said, no, he bought one and his son bought one. They go on different forms. And so Ethan signs all the paperwork and says, yep, when do you need the money? He goes, yeah, definitely by the end of January, but we can be ready to close the middle of January. Says, okay. We go home. I said, you know what you have to do now? He goes, yep, find a lender. So he gets on the phone, calls up a lender, negotiates, I think it was 8.25%, 10-year payback, no balloon, and bought the house. He would have to give you numbers. If I'm not mistaken, he bought a house for $18,500. It needs $17,000 or $18,000 in work. I have never been to the house. I know the neighborhood. I own the house next door, but it has been vacant for 5 to 7 years. I didn't see it. It's in the same town that his grandparents live in, so he goes over there almost every week. He convinced his grandfather to drive him over. Grandpa sits in the truck because he has a little bit more trouble moving. Ethan jumps out, goes in. The house is unsecure, so he goes in. He takes notes. He FaceTimes me to say, hey, do these basement walls look good? What about this electric service? And gets a couple of pictures of the roof from the ground. And I told him what everything would cost to repair it. And so as long as he found everything, I gave him pretty accurate expenses.
Yeah.
So 17 to 18,000. He figures he'll have at least $40,000 in by the time you add in holding cost. And if I'm not mistaken, he got a $40,000 loan for this. So the guy says, yeah, I'll wire the money in the first week or two of the new year. So that should be coming in any day now.
Wow.
But that's just the last 2 weeks, the one house the 13-year-old bought.
When it comes to the income from these investments for your kids, do they keep the cash? Are they just building?
Of course it's theirs, not mine.
They're just building wealth.
Yeah. Deven became accredited last year. And so he invested in his first oil well. And he got like an eighth of a share or whatever, $12,500 worth. But he bought into an oil well, and that sent the team, because they're desperately trying to come up. That one was 1.8 million total. So they have to constantly find funds to drill these deep wells. And you have somebody that is accredited, but he is not old enough to drive yet. And we told him, well, this is what we do in real estate. No one asked. They might say, no, you can't do it if you're under 18, but nobody asked for the birth date of a company. It was born 3 years ago. I mean, that's the day we filed the paperwork. So they said, all right, well, as long as he signs as a member of his company and gets it notarized, which he has a state ID, so he has an ID, he can get stuff notarized, no problem. They said, yeah, we can accept that. So he bought his share, and then I bought a little bit more, but they're in totally different names. Mine, I used my own personal name, and he bought through his company's name.
Wow.
Because he really needed more write-offs. He got slaughtered in taxes last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait a minute. Can we just take a moment and appreciate the statement that your 15-year-old rather, sorry, got slaughtered in taxes last year? Things you don't normally hear a father say about their 15-year-old. Wow. And how much do you feel the need to put on guardrails or influence? If he came to you and he was like, I want to make this real big investment, I want to buy this thing that's crazy purchase, like, do you get involved in that? Or, and I imagine it's a scale, right? Like you said, it's like, how badly am I protecting them from, is it a Band-Aid, plaster, or a casket situation, right? But
I don't believe I would ever say no.
Yeah.
That's just not how our family works. I would let him know the drawbacks, but I don't know, maybe $10,000 in crypto. And so he's lost 70-80% of that. I don't know the numbers at all, but I think he was up to 10 grand or more in crypto. And I'm sure he didn't sell any. So on paper, he's down, 70%. I know what coins he owns, and that's about the average. When it comes to, we set up his first house with a 9-year payback, so it will be paid off. And then he ended up buying a duplex that he already paid off a year ago, which is really, really convenient. So he's got a $100,000 loan that's almost paid off, and he has a duplex, which is worth less than that is completely paid off. So he can sit there and just collect these rents and use that to pay a payment on his first vehicle, whatever it is. And if he wanted to go out and buy a Lamborghini or something, I would probably encourage him not to. I didn't do so well. I thought I was a great driver, because I drove four-wheelers everywhere as a kid, just like them. And I trust him on the farm tractor. And he started driving my pickup truck, well, basically grandma's car, everybody's car. He's got his temps now. And he is very safe and slow. It terrifies me to see what the 13-year-old will do when he's old enough to get his temps. But the older one's a lot safer and slower. And if he wanted to go out and buy a sports car, I wouldn't have a problem with it. It is either their money or it's not. You can't have it both ways. You have to be 100% all in, totally congruent. And yet I have encouraged him to buy a smaller pickup truck, probably a Nissan Frontier. He's used to driving my Nissan Titan. So why don't you get the smaller version? It's a lot more useful if you want an SUV, something like that. That would be good. They're heavy enough to protect you if you get in a wreck. They're a lot more useful. Maybe a couple of years old rather than going out and buying a brand new one. And then by the time you're 17 or 18, have a couple of years of driving, get whatever you want. But it just makes sense, like we teach everything else. I'm not saying that you're not good enough. I am saying we didn't jump in and buy a 100-unit apartment building in a new market. We bought a house really close to where we lived, and we learned from that. And then we worked our way up to a duplex, a 4-unit, a 6-unit with stores and a different city and different laws. And, finally we've got 4 mobile home parks, part of an airport, 2 hangars on another airport, couple of airplanes, 4 mobile home parks, and all these houses and apartments. But we didn't just jump in like that. We started one at a time and went to the next logical step.
Yeah, that's right.
So
When you look,
go ahead.
when you look back on your journey, Eric, as a father, what would you say is something that you're very proud of? And what is something that you feel was your biggest lesson, your biggest, I don't want to say failure, but learning, right? Or however you want to phrase it, it would be where you stubbed your toe the most. Give us either end of that spectrum through the lens of you reflecting on your role as a father.
I think that the smartest decision I ever did, I love traveling and teaching. I love being on these podcasts. I just get so pumped up, and I am so excited that my kids enjoy it too. I never imagined that they would write a book. And you look at the wall behind me, all of those books are family published. And I think the worst thing that I did, which turned out to be the best, was I was traveling all over speaking when Deven was born. And when he was roughly a year old, I decided just abruptly to quit and stay home and not go on the road anymore. I had missed 6 months out of the first year of his life. And a dad needs to be there. We really need 2 parent figures. And you have to have the motherly, I love you, let me support you. And you also have the traditional father figure. Let him fall down, let him get hurt, pick him up and say, hey, you can do it. It's all right. I'm here for you. And sure, don't let them get hurt too bad, but let them make mistakes that mom might be a little bit more overprotective and wouldn't let them make. So yeah, being there, I spent 6 months at home. I ignored my business, which was a terrible idea. I thought I was rich. I thought I had it all going and everything was Yeah, it pretty much blew apart in 2007. I've got a brand new baby. I take a year off. I'm spending piles of money traveling and, but staying home and really being there. For the year I was gone, I spent every waking moment. All I did is play with my kid, and yeah, that was pretty much it. Bad for my business, not healthy in any way. And then when I was gone, I was totally focused on speaking, not worried about my family at home. So when I chose to stay home, that was great. And it was even better a few years ago when my entire family decided they wanted to go and they liked traveling and going to these seminars. So we went as students and then eventually started speaking. And now all of us have been on stage. And in fact, my wife and 2 kids run the Youth Academy at the National Real Estate Summit for 2 days every year. So yeah, that was the best decision I made, is to be there with my kid no matter what. It is so much more important. You can always have a business where you can do that. And maybe it's not the traveling speaking business. Maybe it's the stay home and build your real estate company business. But family is the most important. And what were my biggest mistake with my employees, with my subcontractor? I did okay with tough contractors in the construction company. But boy, when it came to the women in Lila's office and the real estate brokerage and my kids, I was far too much of a drill sergeant. I was an instructor in the Army. I spent close to 5 years active, and the rest was reserve. But I was an E7, Sergeant First Class. If you were a Marine, you'd call it a gunny sergeant. And I was pretty intense and in your face with discipline. And it took me the first year or so. Probably if you ask anybody around me, they'll say he still needs to mellow. But the first year or so was the worst. I was too demanding, too strong, too tough. And thankfully, I had a lot of incredibly successful women in my life that taught me that you don't have to be in their face yelling like a drill sergeant to get results. You can be a heck of a good leader just quietly, almost passively, and get as good or better results. And that was very important for me to learn. I'd have to say that was one of my biggest character flaws that I have more or less overcome, at least most of it.
What's the primary message, Eric, that you want to convey in the book, The Family Success Triangle? If men who are listening to this show who want to be family men with businesses by the way, succeed wildly in business, but keep family in a priority position, right? What message do you want them to know?
Quit trying to balance and start to integrate. It doesn't matter if you have a 3-year-old that you want to teach how to play memory and reconcile your accounts, but taking time away from your business, if you're going to do it that way, be 100% with your family. Don't worry about what's going on at the office. Don't worry about whether you're going to have another water line break. Just be there with your kids. And if you are going to be at work, let go of your kids. He's seen the doctor, you got him the right medicine. Maybe he's sick. Maybe he's got a nanny. Maybe he's got a mom and whatever. Focus on your work. Be where you are 100%. And every time you can, put them together. Figure out what really the triangle and the family success triangle is. My kids learn to work in my business. That freed up more time that I could play with my kids. My kids made money from my business and started investing, first in Legos and then mobile homes and houses and apartment buildings. And that gave them more freedom. They got a lot of knowledge. It taught them, and business and investing is one of the classes they have in school. They're homeschooled. I get to make this stuff up. So that's what they do. In fact, my wife's currently writing a curriculum for everybody that wants to have a business, because they just don't teach investing in school. So that's one of our next couple years of goals, is to get this curriculum out where everybody can use it, so all kids can learn financial education from a very young age. But the more they learn about business, the more money they can make. They can start new businesses, provide new jobs. That gives them more money to invest. They have more investments. They have more passive income. And both of these make the family stronger. Working together makes the family stronger. So it's all about integrating the family, business, and investing all together. I would say that's the essence of the book.
Yeah. And Eric, what else have we not talked about today that you think is an important message?
I would really like to go back to being congruent. It's so easy to say this is right and this is wrong, but raising a family, it's not a math problem. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. It's more like English, which always annoyed me. So what is the pluperfect tense? Why do I have to know all these conjugations trying to learn Spanish? There's so many different ways to get a result, and it's not one way is always better. So just always, when in doubt, the answer is always tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I just used that on my wife. She goes, how do I do this? I don't know how to get this into our computer system. I said, well, when in doubt, just tell the truth. She said, thanks, Eric. You're not helping a bit. I said, think about it. I go, exactly what, if you wrote a flow chart of exactly what you did, write that down. Yeah. I said, good. Now that's how you put it in the computer. And it'll work for the family. It'll work for our accounting. It'll work for the IRS. It'll work for just tell the truth. And if you think about how you do everything all the way through, if you are congruent and you don't leave stuff out, then that will help you get through any problem you have in your life.
Yeah. Eric, fast forward into the future with me for a moment and think towards the end of your life. Your kids are older, of course, you've been married many years, and you're looking back and you're thinking, gosh, I'm so grateful for my life and what has been created and what I've been able to witness, and the influence that you've had. What does a successful life look like for you looking back? How will you know that you've been successful as a family man? And maybe it's the same answer. Maybe it's that you've been congruent, but give you space for something else.
I just got tingles down my spine. Man, I'm really old. I'm probably in a lazy boy. There's a fire in front of me, and I've got a grandchild, a great grandchild sitting on my lap. Maybe there's piles of dishes everywhere because my entire extended family was over for Thanksgiving dinner, which is when I always get together with my family. There'll be a mess on the floor because the kids are playing Legos. Devin's might be playing Legos, and Ethan's will be crashing cars into something. We will take a big trip, maybe in one of the kids' jets, and they'll let me sit at the front and fly again, even though I'm old, and make sure I don't mess it up. But really looking, if there was no money, if there was nothing, yes, I wish they would have a nice, easy life. And I understand life's not easy. They're going to have a lot of problems. So that's not what I'm looking for. I just want them to grow to be strong enough to overcome any problem life throws at them, and to sit there and see them growing up and probably having families of their own and being invited and everybody's happy. And the biggest arguments are over what dessert should we have or something like that. Just to have an awesome day way more than once a year, to spend time like my mother gets my kids 2 days almost every week. They go over Sunday night or Monday morning, and then they come back for Boy Scouts Tuesday evening. And knowing that she gets to see them so much, and I got to see one of my grandparents almost every week like that. And my dad passed away, but my stepmom still gets the kids about every other week on Friday during the day. So seeing the whole extended family, I would like that when I'm the grandfather or the great grandfather, to be there and be very much a part of my grandchildren's lives. That would be everything to me.
Eric, I think that tells us a lot about you and your heart, man, and what makes you wake up in the morning. That feels very congruent to me. I want to say thank you for making time today to be with us. I really enjoyed the fact that we started this show with your boys. That was
totally unexpected.
Unexpected surprise.
I'm really glad you did that. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, it was really great. And I'm also kind of happy we didn't plan for that. Like they were there, they had popped in, and we just decided to, like, hey, we're going to tell the story about the boys. Let's have them tell the story. And they did such a great job. You could feel the heart they bring to each of those statements they're making about who the family is. And, you know, I felt the pride they had in holding those books up. So my hat tip to you, Eric, for what a tremendous job you're doing as a father in your family, and then helping create a storyline that maybe some of the fathers listening to this show can kind of hear and maybe replicate in their own unique way, with their own DNA, in their own families, the way that they want to connect, the way they want to tell the truth, the way they want to invest their time, energy, resources. But I certainly appreciate the way that you've lived, and that now we knowing the future, how you may intend to live continually. I wish that for you, that picture that you just painted comes true. I wish you and your family all the best, and I'm really grateful that you're here. We'll link to the books and to your sites in the notes at frontrowdads.com. But if people want to connect with you further, where would you send them?
We have a free newsletter that goes out every Wednesday, and you can sign up at clearskytrainer.com. If you ever want to hear us speak, or if you want us to come to your group or be on your podcast, you can get my information. Just email me, eric@clearskytrainer.com, or there are bios. Everything you'd want to know is on that website. And really, I just want to get out, spread the word, spend more time with your kids, and start your own business. If you'll notice, the essence of everything we do is taking on the overreach and taking responsibility and control of our own lives. So yeah, if I can teach more people so they can have a happier, healthier life and spend more time with their family, I think the world will truly be a better place. And that's all we want.
Eric, thanks again for being here, brother. I hope this isn't our last conversation. I wish you well, and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you.